Said about the Sikha.
That's a Sikha about 7.
Maybe Rabbi Greenberg said about, I don't know.
So I want to mention number 4 on page 23, a quote, which is used very often, and you find it very much a lot in the Rebbe's Sikhas, and it's related to what I explained. Remember we explained, last thing we explained yesterday was that if we would have 7 days a week doing what we need to do, we would never be able to hold on and maintain and retain that level of spirituality. Eventually it would just fade away because we'd be worn down by everything that's going on in the physical material world. So Hashem gave us a day like Shabbos. That's like the fireplace, a day that we immerse ourselves more than all the days of the week in spirituality. And then for the next few days, next 6 days, we can maintain a balance. Then we said the same is with the 7th sabbatical year. The Eibishter gave us 1 year and said this whole entire year, you could be immersed more in spirituality. And that'll give you the strength that for the next 6 years, you'll be able to maintain a balance. And on a yearly basis, that's the month of Tishrei, the 7th month. Here's 1 month where we're totally immersed with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, then it's Tshuva and Sukkot, Simchas Torah, Simchas Beis HaSheva. And now that'll give you the strength that for the rest of the year, you can maintain a balance. So,
You have that also for Hanukkah?
what do you mean?
Is Hanukkah also like that? Or is it considered?
The Hanukkah is also the same idea, but something different that you meet once in 7 years. Yeah, it's connected. It's all connected. But Hanukkah is emphasizing more the unity. So these words, Menei Mizbarchin Kul Yomim, from this day, all days are blessed. Where did that come from? So the source of these words is the Zohar. And the Zohar says something very interesting. When the man fell to the ground in the desert, it only fell 6 days a week. Which day did it not fall? On Shabbos. But Zohar writes, even though it didn't fall on Shabbos, but from that day, all the days of the week got the bracha. In other words, when would it sort of begin its journey to come down to this world? It began on Shabbos. And from Shabbos, the whole week got blessed. Which means that every Shabbos brings the bracha for the next 6 days of the week. So Shabbos has 2 aspects to it. On one hand, it's the culmination of the previous week. On the other hand, it's a source of bracha for the new week. So when we say a source of bracha, in that context, it's a bracha for parnasa, have what to eat, and to be able to thrive throughout the week. Spiritually, it means that on Shabbos, because I spend my time learning and davening new mitzvahs, that gives me the strength to spiritually have the right balance for the rest of the week. The name is Barchin Kol Yomim. So hundreds and hundreds of sikhs are based on this, how the Rebbe goes into how each Shabbos is really a source of inspiration, and it includes in it, in some ways, everything that's going to be throughout the week. Number 5 is another interpretation of the word Shvi. Shvi means the 7th, but Shvi also means to satiate, sova, soveya, which means like when a person eats food, who's hungry, they eat and their hunger becomes satisfied. In Hebrew, it's the same letters as the word Shvi. And what does that mean? It means that on this, not this day, this month, the month of Tishrei, Hashem satiates us with all the good things for the rest of the year. It's the same idea that we become filled with all the brachas, with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and everything else, for that will last and give us the strength for the rest of the year. And number 6 is a third interpretation to the word Shvi. Shvi has the same letters of the word Shvuah, which means an oath. How does an oath come in here? Anybody familiar with this?
Everything we oath about, it's really.
But that's not shvuah. Shvuah means oath. I make a shvuah. I'm going to do something. I'm not going to do something. Taurus Nadarim, right. The stam is a ken kashur, but so one of the answers that are given to this is the reason why it's called shvi and it comes from the word shvuah, because Hashem made an oath. And we made an oath. We took an oath that we are connected to Hashem forever, unconditionally. And Hashem took an oath that He's connected to us unconditionally. So it's another reason why here we're going to be standing on trial and Hashem is going to be judging us. So in a sense, this is like bringing in the fact that no matter what the judgment is, no matter what's happening, we are in it forever and nothing in the world could chas v'shalom sever the relationship and the connection between us and Hashem. The rest of the things in the booklet are things that I think were brought up in other classes, and therefore I'm going to go to the next booklet, which is to discuss Rosh Hashanah according to Chassidus, and it's a different color, so it's more exciting. It's yellow. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
so we're always talking about the relationship between the Yidden and Hashem.
Wait, we're done with this?
Not done. Now you have to make it go from the book into your head.
But I'm saying like we didn't finish the book though.
I know. I said because this other part talks about Anila Daida B'Daidali, and it's something which is brought up so many times in so many classes. So I think we'll leave it. I think everybody knows that information. Yeah.
So we talked about the relationship between the Yidden and Hashem being right. The relationship's like an engagement now and the marriage when Mashiach comes.
Right.
So I'm just wondering, like, and also like oath, right? Like kind of the Chumri also like an oath. So I'm wondering, like Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, do those represent any like specific I don't know, like.
In other words, using this metaphor, do they fit in that kind of? Probably. I think if we think hard enough, we can find something like it. But we have to think. But we know that Yom Kippur is also the day that Hashem gave us the Torah again.
Right.
So therefore, Yom Kippur is like the ring. It says that the Torah that Hashem gave us is like the ring that a husband gives to the wife. The 7 days of Sukkot is like Sheva Brachas. We're celebrating.
Ring right there.
What?
Really
Expensive ring, right?
And also Yom Kippur is called the Shabbos of all Shabbos.
Right, Shabbos Shabboson, yeah.
Is it like each letter like $1 or something for Sarah?
Each letter worth $1?
Something like that?
No, when you buy a letter, you want to write into the Torah, you pay $1 at least, minimum, but it doesn't mean that the letter is worth $1. Each letter is priceless.
No, but I'm saying
No price.
when you buy a Sefer Torah, someone that needs like I don't know. But do you know like how much it is for the whole Sefer Torah?
Usually they go by how it was written, how much time it took them. Let's say a new Sefer Torah could cost something like $25,000-$30,000.
See, it's like $20.
Yep. Okay, look at page 1. There are 7 points here that we're going to go into about explaining Rosh Hashanah from a Hasidic perspective. One is going to be the blowing of the shofar. One is going to be about the judgment. One is going to be what does it mean to accept Hashem's kingdom. One is going to be about a pigeon, a pan, which we'll talk about more. All of you that were here last year, you know what this is. Number 5 is about what does it mean that Hashem judges on this day. I'll explain the difference between 5 and 2. Number 6 and 7 are related to a specific kind of tzedakah, so that we do before the new year. So we'll get there, we'll explain. So the first thing we'll start with is the shofar. What is the significance of shofar? Chassidus. In other words, shofar is a mitzvah in the Torah, but there's a way of understanding it on the surface and his way is understanding it from a deeper and more Hasidic perspective. They're all true, just different layers of depth. So the first thing is we look in the Rambam, Maimonides, which is the book of Halacha, and let's see what he writes. So let's look on page 4.
Reminds me of that song.
Which song?
Wake up, yes,
Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's where the song comes from. Number 4, the Rambam didn't get it from the song, but the song got it from the Rambam. Number 4.
Kodesh didn't extend that far. Maybe it did, but you just.
Number 4. Af al pi shetkias. So reading the Rambam where it says David, which is the 4th halacha. Even though the blowing shofar Rosh Hashanah is gezeres hakasuv, which means it's a decree from heaven, we don't really know the reason behind it. But nevertheless, remez yeshba, there is something, some sort of a homiletic allusion. It alludes to something. There's a certain message there. It's not really the full depth of it, but there's a message there. And what's the message? Turn the page. The message is Uru Yishenim Mishinaschem. Wake up from your sleep. V'nirdamim hakitzim atidamaschem. And those of you that are in a deep slumber, wake up. Chipsu b'maseichem. Look into, search your deeds, examine your deeds, and do tshuva, and remember your Creator. Elu hasheichem asayim. This is for those who forget the truth. B'havli azman, in all the vanities of the times. Shoigim koshnosam behevel v'rik. The entire year they devote their time and their energy in things that are vanity and nonsense, things that don't do anything for them. And the Shofar says, Habitu nafshesechem, look into your souls. Itivu darchechem, improve your ways. V'yazed kolechet mekem darka, leave, abandon your old ways and your negative thoughts and do things that are right. So in other words, what the Rambam is saying is, just to use the analogy, yes, Nadia.
Sorry, so I don't know if it's just translation, but it says, the Shofar call is saying, wake up, you sleepy ones from your sleep. Why does it have to be sleepy ones from your sleep? Why can't it just say, wake up from your sleep?
Actually, it is the exact translation from the Hebrew. Uru means wake up. Yishena means you sleepy ones. Mishinaschem, from your sleep. Must be a reason. There must be a reason, yes. I don't know. If you say wake up from your sleep, it's obvious, right? But this means like this, just like the Gashmias. Imagine in a picture of someone, it's an amazing, beautiful day outside, the sun is shining, there's a cool breeze, people are out there going for walks and having entertainment, and they're enjoying themselves. And here is someone who's not, because they're sleeping. It doesn't mean they're not interested in having a good time. They're just not even aware. They're sleeping. They don't know what's happening out there. Or the opposite. The house is on fire, God forbid. Everybody's running to save their life. And this person isn't going anywhere. Why? Not because they don't care, because they're sleeping. They're not even aware that the house is on fire. So Begash Meruchnis is the same thing. There's so much beauty, so much depth, so much wisdom in Torah and mitzvahs, in all the laws of Torah, Kashrus and Shabbos and Taras Mishpacha and Tznius and Tzedakah. It's so amazing. And the reason why people aren't going to it because they're sleeping. They're just not paying attention. So the Shofar says, wake up and look how amazing things are out there that you can go for. Well, the same was with the opposite, that there are things a person does that are really damaging Begashmias, damaging Beruchnias. And the reason why they are not stopping to do it is because they're sleeping. And metaphorically speaking, they're sleeping. They're not paying attention. So the shofar is like a symbol. It symbolizes an alarm, like wake up. Wake up. That's what the Rambam explains, and that's the explanation on the superficial level. There's another explanation that's given. If you look at the next thing on the page from Rabbi Yitzchak or Barditchev, which is also not a sort of a Hasidic explanation, it's a general explanation, the way you can understand it in a general way. One of the reasons that are given why we blow shofar is to remind us of the shofar that was blown when the Torah was given. So Rabbi Barditchev explains it with a mashal. Beautiful mashal. And he says that there was once a king that he told his servants that he wants to go into the forest on his own. He doesn't want to have his own entourage around. He wants to be by himself. Don't hang on to me. Just let me go and spend some time with myself. He went out into the forest. But unfortunately, because he never did these things on his own, he got lost. He didn't know his way out. And every time he tried to make another exit, he ended up going deeper into the forest. Then it came nighttime. He was lost. And actually, everybody was looking for him. They couldn't find him. He couldn't find them, and just kept walking deeper into the forest. And after a number of days, a number of weeks, his clothes were torn from just having to go between the trees. He was half the size because he hardly ate anything. His hair was long. He looked a mess. And in the midst of all this, he saw from the distance, over here, he can get out. Doesn't matter where, I'm just getting out of the forest. He went to that area and he came out, and there was some kids playing there. And when they saw him, somebody threw a rock at him, as kids do. Said, "You know who I am? I'm your king." And all started to laugh. He's the king. And they started to throw more rocks because he's so, he's not well. Unfortunately, he ran back into the forest, went into hiding, and he continued walking. But every time he came out and tried to tell people, "I'm the king," they laughed at him, that you don't even look anywhere near like the king. So unfortunately, he was in a predicament. One day when he was walking in the forest, he heard music, beautiful sound of a violin. And he sees that someone sitting on the stump of a tree, playing a beautiful melody on violin. And he was listening, he was like, under the spell of the music. And when the person finished, he turned around and he saw him. He takes a look at him and says, "You look like you're our lost king." He says, "Yes, I am. Finally, somebody recognized me." The person took him to his house, gave him a haircut, gave him food, helped him get back to himself. He needed some time till he could go back to just to be the way he was. And then once he was ready, they traveled together to the palace. Everyone was happy to see him. And he told this person, "I want to reward you. I want to make you a servant in my palace, or give you a position in my palace." And he did. Gave him a position. He became a minister or some sort of position in the palace. But when you're in these places, it's a pretty sensitive place, a dangerous place to make a mistake. And that's what happened. Something went wrong. And they had a trial. And in the trial, the verdict was that he has to be put to death for whatever it is that he did. In those days, by the way, but kings put to death was not a big deal. So before they do that, they tell the person, "You can have one last request." So he said, "Yeah, I have a request. I want them to bring from my house the violin and certain clothes that are in my house, that you can bring it to me." So he went to the house, they brought him the clothes and the violin that he had the day that the king discovered this person. And he sat down and he played that melody that he played on that day. When the king heard it, all his memories came back. And then he pleaded for his life, and the king said, "You're pardoned." So basically, the Levi's Vadishma says that we're on trial. It's Rosh Hashanah. So what we do is we blow the shofar that we blew when Hashem gave the Torah. He went to different nations and they said they're not interested. And he came to us and we said, "Nasa v'nishma." So let's blow the shofar that day. Everybody rejected you and we accepted you, and therefore pardon us. That's another explanation. And there are more. So I want to go into what's the explanation according to Chassidus. So what is the explanation according to Chassidus?
All that work.
Yeah. Explanation according to Chassidus is as follows. No, I'm not turning to any pages. We'll first explain it, then later we'll go into. According to Chassidus, we go into this following. Where does tshuva come from? Where do we have that strength to do tshuva? Generally speaking, what does it mean to do an aver? We learned in Tanya in the morning that when a person commits a sin, it's like causing certain spiritual damage to ourselves. So just like you can damage your body, you can, God forbid, damage your neshama. So if a person did damage to themselves, the damage just like physically, your hands, your arms, your feet, your legs, your heart, your head. What do you mean? Just do tshuva? You say, I won't do it again. But they did the damage already. How does all that change? So Chassidus explains that the power for tshuva comes from the part of the neshama that's called yichida. You know, I hope from last year that there are 5 names to the neshama, right? And these are not just names, they're 5 layers of depth in the neshama. One is nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yichida. Yichida is the part of the neshama that's eternal. What does it mean eternal? Its connection to Hashem is eternal. And no matter what a person does, even if they do the worst kind of avera, God forbid they convert to another religion, the yichida not only doesn't get destroyed, it doesn't even get damaged, it doesn't even get touched. It's as if for the yichida, nothing makes a difference. It's as strong as ever. There's nothing that could affect it. And that's the deepest part of my neshama. And that part of my neshama was never, ever affected by an avera, even the worst avera in the world. That's from where we draw the strength to do tshuva, because that part of my neshama is connected. And then from there, we can see that connection to spread to the other parts of my neshama. That's what the yichida is. That's where it comes from, the yichida. The only problem is that yichida is something very deep, yes?
I know that Yechida is connected to Nehila, and that's when it's like revealed. But are there other times when like you could like tap into your Yechida or have like a Yechida moment, or is it really only on Yom Kippur?
So generally speaking, there are 2 ways that we can tap into yichida. One is if you become a tzaddik gomer. That's easy.
That's easy.
The other is where even people that are not tzaddikim tap into yichida, but that's not something we want to deal with. And that is, if God forbid, a person is challenged with a choice, as it was in history, where people were told, either you bow down to this idol, either you convert to Christianity, otherwise they'll get killed. Unfortunately, that's what happened. And we know that tens of thousands of Jews chose to give up their life rather than giving up Yiddishkeit. But they're not situated tzaddikim. Where did they get that kind of strength? So this is the yichida is something that when you're challenged in such a way, it's like adrenaline. That's when it comes up to the surface. And therefore, the yichida was where they got the strength. Yichida, everything melts in its path. When yichida comes out, it's as strong as ever. So they're ready even to give up their lives. So it means normally yichida can only come to someone who's a big tzaddik, or even a person who's not a tzaddik if these challenges come up. But in ordinary circumstances, yichida does not come up. And the only time that it sort of comes up because of the time is this time of the year, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And we're going to learn a little bit later that the yichida takes a little journey. It starts rising on Rosh Hashanah, and every day it goes up another notch and reaches the top on Yom Kippur.
And then the top is right at the end of Yom Kippur.
And in Yom Kippur itself, it's at the end when Lu Ne'ilah, the last part. That's when everyone shouts Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, and you're supposed to actually.
People yell that before they die.
Right, and in fact, they're supposed to be thinking that. If you look in your machzor, it says when you shout these words, to be thinking that if God forbid I would be challenged with this challenge, I'm ready to give my life for Hashem. Why? Because that's the time for yichida. The challenge of either, God forbid, converting to another religion or to give up your life. So there's you want to add something? No.
Is it like
Yeah.
yichida is also a time when, or like your yichida is connected?
Yes, I'm gonna get this. Yeah.
Oh, I think you know.
Hit it on the button. Yeah. I mean, this explains why you see tens of thousands of people that never go to shul all year round, and they come Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And when you ask them why, oh, my grandpa used to come. It's really sentimental. I have a good feeling about it. It's a nice thing. Another person will say, "Oh, there's a beautiful cantor. I would love to hear this guy." Yeah, not good enough. Yeah, Tiratzim. These are excuses. What's really happening is that whether you do anything or not, just the time itself, the holiness of this time, the Yechida begins to rise. Yes, it's Rosh Hashanah, but it starts before. And the person doesn't realize it, but that's what's pulling him in to come to be associated with Yiddishkeit. I'm talking about even a person who goes to Reform synagogue, to conservative synagogue, but he's associating, he wants to identify with Yiddishkeit. That's his way. Someone's going to go, I'm not going to go to Shul, I just want to go visit Israel. Doesn't matter. That's his way of identifying. He wants to get connected to Judaism. And that's because of the Yechida. That's really what's going on. So on Rosh Hashanah, we say a certain chapter of Tehillim, and then we say it every day until Yom Kippur. We don't say it any time of the year. The first day, Rosh Hashanah, every day until Yom Kippur. Which chapter is it? Not in Tehillim, but in the davening. And we say this chapter, it begins with the words Shir Hamales, Mimamakim Krasicha Hashem. I call to you from the depth. We say this right after Yishtabach. You find it in the Siddur on the bottom. It says that during the 10 days of Tshuva, you say this chapter of Tehillim. And the Zohar says that there are 10 layers of depth. And every day it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. So that's why, because what we're saying is that during these 10 days, the deepest depth of my neshama rises to the surface. So how is this connected to Shofar? So the answer is like this. According to, when you study Torah on a superficial level, most of the mitzvahs are symbols. A mezuzah is a symbol, a matzah is a symbol, lulav and esrog is a symbol. Look in any book how they explain it. This symbolizes this symbolizes that. According to Chassidus, they're not symbols. They're actually tools and instruments that make things happen spiritually. Which means the blowing of the shofar has to be the way it is according to Torah. Hashem said, if you design it the way your shofar is designed, you blow the sound that I'm telling you to blow, and you blow it in the time that I'm telling you to blow it, then this will have an effect that it'll actually arouse the Yechida from the depth of the neshama to rise. So in fact, if you think of it that way, the words of the Rambam, wake up, can actually have a literal meaning. It's the shofar actually wakes up something that's in me in a very deep subconscious place, and the shofar wakes it up. Now, it doesn't mean if you walk around and you blow the shofar, the next thing you know, wow, I'm going to yeshiva. Where's my money out? It doesn't work like that, because at the end of the day, we have to do the work. But it brings it closer to consciousness, and it allows me have more of an ability to access it, to connect to it. And if I make the right effort, I could really develop it more. Yeah.
Can you just say that one more time? There's 10 days that we say the Shir Malach between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and there's 10 spheres. And then can you say it?
So this means that the Yechida is rising every day, or you can look at it this way, that every day we bring it up from a deeper place, until we reach the deepest depth of the neshama, which is the deepest layer of depth of the Yechida that rises. And when is that? That's on Yom Kippur.
What if you miss Shofar for like one day? Does it not rise as much?
Again, Rosh Hashanah is a mitzvah, but not on Elul. It's not a mitzvah. You can miss the whole month, and there's nothing wrong with it.
It's not a mitzvah.
There's no commandment to blow shofar in Elul. It's a
But you don't
minig.
get a mitzvah for hearing it?
We won't call it a mitzvah. It's a positive thing. It has a certain spiritual effect on you. But on Rosh Hashanah, it's a mitzvah. Like, could you imagine somebody's listening to shofar the whole month and says on Rosh Hashanah, okay, I heard 30 days of shofar already, 29 days. Today I'll relax a little bit. You just missed the point. The main thing is Rosh Hashanah. All the shofar now is just orientation, preparation, getting us there. But the mitzvah, which is one of the biggest mitzvahs, is Rosh Hashanah, right? Yeah.
Have that show,
Yeah. So that's the difference between the shofar, the way we understand it on the surface, and the shofar, the way we understand it on a deeper level, which is that it's an actual instrument that has an effect on the Yechidah. Now, this idea of blowing shofar, like at a chuppah they blow shofar now, people go to a supermarket, they blow shofar. So it appears that I remember it happened, I think, once the children came in from camp, and it was already in Elul. Mincha time, no one even thought of doing this, and the Rebbe said, why don't they blow shofar? So we understood from this that even though it's not a mitzvah, it's not an obligation, but apparently in the month of Elul, when you blow shofar, it has a certain effect on bringing out things in a person. So therefore, again, it's a positive thing, but it's not an obligation. So if you see somebody running around shouting, I didn't hear shofar today, help, calm down. There's no, especially a woman, there's no obligation at all. It's a custom. I think years ago, women definitely didn't. It's only also in the recent years that women started to be listening to shofar. But if shofar has a spiritual effect on bringing out the spirituality in me, the yichid in me, why not? Now you mentioned something, Sarah mentioned something about yichidus. Yichidus, I want to explain, and we have something I'll point it out later in the booklet, but being that you brought it up already, I'll mention it. And that is, actually, Hasidim have a custom that they come to the Rebbe for Yom Tov, as you know, and you'll feel it soon.
We'll hear it.
You'll smell it.
When do they
hear it,
come?
you'll see
Generally
it,
speaking, every chassid comes in a time that works for them. Some come for Shavuos, some come for Yom Kislev, some come for Purim, some come for different times of the year. But the one time which is sort of the most popular and most chassidim make an effort to come is Tishrei. I think most people will tell you the reason is because Tishrei is when there's judgment, and Hashem is going to give you a good year, Kasiva Chasima Tova. So you want to be near a tzaddik and the atmosphere of a tzaddik, so you'll get that bracha, more likely to get that bracha, which is definitely true. But there's another more of a depth to it, is that just like every person has 5 layers to the neshama, and the deepest is yichida, we Yidden all together, we're like one neshama. We all are part of one soul. And when we're part of the one soul, there are also 5 different layers of depth in that one soul. And the yichida of the whole generation is the neshama that's invested in the body of the one that's the leader of the generation, which in our way of seeing things, it's the Rebbe. So it means the Rebbe is the yichida, it's called yichida kloli, the general yichida of all the neshamas. And then in me, I have my individual yichida. So what will help that my individual yichida should rise? That's what we're working on, that my yichida should really rise to the occasion. It should rise and become sensitive and become more aware, is by being in the presence of the yichida hakloli, that'll wake up my personal yichida. And when a chassid will actually go into the Rebbe to have a private audience, the word yichidus means private audience, but the Chassidim would explain it's deeper than that. It's my yichida connecting with the Rebbe's yichida. And that's the ultimate sort of connection that could be. Of course, you brought something up, Tova, that is there any special time for it? But then the question is, so how come now we see people doing tshuva all the time, not only on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? I didn't do any research, I don't do statistics, but I wouldn't be surprised that people who do research will come up with a conclusion that probably not an hour goes by, or maybe not even a half hour, or maybe not even every 5 minutes, that there's somebody around the globe that's getting more involved in Yiddishkeit between all the countries in the world and all the activities that are going on in terms of outreach and miftzayim and shlichus. Somewhere, some places, somebody new that's now getting involved in Yiddishkeit. And it's not Rosh Hashanah, it's not Yom Kippur, it's all days of the year. So the answer is, this is for a different reason why it's happening now. What's the reason? Because when Mashiach comes, everybody's yichida will be revealed. And because we're so close to Mashiach's coming, we're already witnessing it now on a global level. It's like when there's a storm, you look out the window, the wind is blowing,
Yeah,
the trees are flying all over the place, and they say on the radio, this is not the storm. This is just before the storms. What is it? The storm is coming, so already you can feel it. You see the rain, you see the wind, you see the flooding. So too, before the storm, we already feel that storm, and that's where Tshuva is coming from today. Because otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. What's happening today is a whole generation of people returning to their roots after 2-3 generations being away from it. Does not make any sense any other way than explaining that this is some sort of a spiritual phenomenon. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, so now I'm going to go into another thing about the shofar. I think it'll help if we could actually demonstrate or look at it at least. So, do you mind, Sarah, to getting my shofar? It's on my desk. You shouldn't have to look for it. Thank you. When you blow the shofar, there's certain psukim that we recite all together when we blow the shofar. Here in the booklet, it's on page 7. Once you finish the Torah reading, the next thing that happens in Rosh Hashanah is the blowing of the shofar. So before we blow the shofar, we say this chapter Tehillim 7 times. Lam natseach b'nei korach mizbar. We say it 7 times. And after the 7 times, then we read these psukim. If you look closely, you see the letters, in the first letter in each pasuk spells 2 words, kra, satan. Kuf reish ayin spells kra, which means tear up or destroy. The next word is satan. Hashem should destroy the satan and all his efforts who's trying to bring judgment on his children. Yep.
What exactly is
The satan, got it? Thank you very much.
one of the
Page 7.
it's actually one of the names.
This is 7 times.
The satan is like that.
One of the names of the Shem.
No, not that. Satan is an angel.
So then why is it there?
What? Why is what there?
It's out of a It says they're all acronym names of the Shem. And it's also, they also have Satan as part of this.
No, Satan is not the name of Hashem.
But
Satan, I don't know, I'm sorry. You'll have to show me where you see the name of Hashem there. Satan is the name of an angel that his mission is to be the prosecuting angel in the heavenly court.
Why do we hate him so much if he's literally just doing Hashem's mission?
Because he's causing us problems. First of all, I don't have to hate him, I just have to get him out of the way.
Okay.
Since of none.
So it's exactly this kara Satan, the same words, destroy the Satan. These are names of angels, but this is an angel that does the opposite, it destroys the Satan, kara
So
Satan.
then why do you say Baruch Shem afterwards?
I can't explain the whole city, no, I can't do that.
Is that all the names of the Shem?
No, they're names of angels,
Those are all names of angels?
yeah.
Somebody talked about.
What?
Somebody is talking about. Right.
So this is actually a very awesome time by the Rebbe. The Rebbe would do something here that, when you watch, I don't know if you ever saw on video or watched other Rebbes.
No.
No, you don't have to. I'm just saying, I'm talking about not people who are, talking about real tzaddikim. When they would daven, it was a storm. They would be banging on the table, jumping up and down, clapping their hands, knocking against the walls. We're talking about real tzaddikim, and they were so emotional that this is what was happening. In fact, this is what happened by the Baal Shem Tov. They used to laugh. People who were against the Baal Shem Tov used to make fun of the way he davened, where he would clap his hands and jump up and down and bang on the table.
Who rolled on the floor?
That's actually the Alter Rebbe, yeah. But the Baal Shem Tov once answered with a mushal. He said, imagine somebody who unfortunately was born deaf. They never heard sound in their life. For the first time in their life, they happen to walk into a ballroom where there's a wedding. And they look around and they say, this place is a bunch of Mishigoyim. This guy's going like this, and this one's turning around in circles, and this is going like that. What are they? Not normal, these people here. Because they don't hear the music. If they would hear the music, not only they would understand that they're very normal, they would actually see the beauty between, the music and the dancing and how everything goes together. It would actually be beautiful. So the Baal Shem Tov says, when you just watch a person bang on the table, going like that, and you don't see the music, of course, it looks funny. But there's a lot going on, a lot of emotion going on. But when you watch the Rebbe daven, you can see this on videos, you saw nothing. If you wouldn't know that this is the Rebbe, you would think it's just another person in the shul. The Rebbe would stand straight, hardly move, look in the siddur, makes no difference if it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, a weekday, every day, the same thing, just looking in and reading, not even shaking back and forth, just pretty much standing straight the whole time. But there were times where we saw something different. Yes, sir.
How did Hashem communicate with the rest? Do we know?
Something which we have no experience, we can't really know. We can't really know how that works. But yeah.
Also, if we're Hasidim of the Rebbe and we want to do what the Rebbe does, then why are you looking at 770? Everyone's chuckling and the Rebbe didn't.
No, the shuckling part is a positive thing in general. In fact, the Zohar says, see, as I'm talking now, I'm shuckling. I don't know if I ever told you the story. We had a student here once that I think her parents gave her such a hard time that I don't think I ever, all my years, I ever had a parent that was so difficult and bad. And one day her parents told her, you know what, we want to come down to the school and listen to the classes. She got very excited because she knew once they go to the classes, that's it, they're in. They sat the whole day in class, just listening, no questions, not talking. At the end of the day, they said, get out of here as quick as you can.
What?
This is a brainwashing center, get away as quick as you can. And she says, why? She didn't expect. Why are you saying that? We noticed all the teachers, when they teach, they shake back and forth. And that's a technique used to brainwash, to hypnotize, But the Zohar says the reason why it's natural for a Jew to shake back and forth is because it says, Ner Hashem Nishma Sadam. The candle of God is the neshama, and a candle, the flame, is the thing that shakes back and forth. And there's actually a chapter in Tanya that explains why the flame shakes back and forth. Other things are steady. You put down a couple of stands there. What? Rotz and Shub. Yeah, that's how the Alter Rebbe explains it.
It's really funny because no one, I don't think we ever realized that you guys are all shepherds.
Why?
Like, I never noticed until right now that you've been doing that the whole time.
Me too. Okay.
I feel like when I listen in class, I'm always like, I don't know. I always do.
Okay. So actually, why the Rebbe is that way, there's an explanation, but it's too much. I don't want to go off topic completely. Maybe one day we'll get back to it.
Why the Rebbe didn't know?
Right, why the Rebbe, we didn't see the Rebbe shuckling like. There was a slight movement, but hardly. But the reason why I'm saying this is that here, by this thing, the Rebbe did things which were really a little bit more unusual. And that is when he did Lamnat Seyach, the Rebbe would cover his head completely with the talus. He never did that other than davening. Under the talus, the Rebbe had all the panim that people gave, all the letters. It was in packages, 4 or 5 packages. The Rebbe had it next to him by davening, and then he took it with him when he went to do the shofar blowing. Shofar blowing was on the bima where you where you do the reading of the Torah. He had it in front of him, put the Palzalba with it, and would say these 7 chapters. And then the Rebbe would say these psukim. In other words, he would say the first one, everybody would answer. The second one, everybody would answer. The third one, everybody would answer.
Wow.
So the first pasuk is Mina Meitzar Karosika. I call to you, Hashem, Mina Meitzar, from distress. The word Meitzar is like the word sorrow, distress. Aneni, Hashem, answer me by merchav, in abundance. In other words, merchav means broadness. Meitzar means narrowness. Distress is narrowness, and the opposite is abundance and openness and width, so to speak, wide, not being narrow. So we say to Hashem, I'm calling to you in Meitzar, but answer me in width. So there's a beautiful thing in the Zohar that says that this pasuk describes the shofar. This side is narrow, and this side is wide. And not only that, the Zohar says that the reason why the sound of the shofar is so loud is because it's narrow. Try to imagine if this side would be wide and this side would be wide, and you'd blow inside. What do you think you'd hear?
Nothing.
That's all. It's like when you blow on a soda bottle, when you whistle, it's loud. Because it's narrow and you blow at it, that's why the sound is so loud. So the Zohar says this physical structure of the shofar is represented in this pasuk, that don't be afraid of the narrowness, don't be afraid of what you have to do tshuva. On the contrary, that narrowness will lead to tremendous broadness and abundance, and as the saying goes, that light that comes after darkness is a much greater light. That's hinted in the shofar. Yeah.
I don't understand how the narrowness is represented. Like the narrowness is our Averis.
The narrowness is like the mode of tshuva. Like I'm thinking about what I did wrong, how I have to improve, and that's where the narrowness comes from. I feel, meaning I feel constricted, like in the sense that I didn't do things right. I want to do tshuva. That's a feeling of narrowness. I'm calling to Hashem. I feel I'm distant from Him, but as a result of that, I'll have merchav. In fact, that's the quote that I have here on the sheet, number 7. Yisin ha'er mitecha chesed. There's a pasuk. It's a pasuk in, I think it's a Mishlei, and it says just like wisdom, just like light is greater than darkness, that's how wisdom is greater than foolishness. The question is, do we need the wisest of all men, Shlomo Melech, to tell us something so revolutionary ideas, that just like light is greater than darkness, wisdom is greater than foolishness? Anybody can tell you that. What's the novelty in that statement? So the answer is, if you look at the words again, look at the Hebrew, Yisin ha'er mitecha cheshech. Light that comes out of darkness is greater than a light that comes without being preceded by darkness, which means anything positive that comes after the opposite kind of experience, whether it's begashmis or beruchnius, is going to be much greater than had you not had that challenge leading up to it. So if a person, for example, is Baruch Hashem blessed that they could see and they could hear and they could walk, and their heart is healthy and their brain is healthy, and they feel healthy and they are healthy and they're functioning in a healthy way, we appreciate it, we thank Hashem. But you can't have the same sense of appreciation like a person who chas v'shalom suffered in one of these areas and they couldn't walk for a few months, and then Hashem helped them that they were able to overcome it and now they could walk. Your appreciation of that is so much greater. And that anytime something happens and Hashem helps you, your appreciation of the things you can do is so much greater because it comes after darkness. In fact, one of the reasons why Hashem set it up in such a way that sometimes we do things negative and we have to do tshuva is because ultimately, as a result of my tshuva, I come to a level of connection to Hashem and devotion to Hashem, which is much greater than a person who never would have gone through the process of tshuva. And this is the famous words in number 8. In a place where about tshuva stands, Ein tzadikim gemurim yecholim lamed. Even a complete tzaddik can't stand in that place. Which means when a person does tshuva, they reach a certain level and they're inspired in a certain way in terms of their connection to Hashem and their desire to be connected. That's way, way more even than a tzaddik because he's always been in it. And that's what we see in the shofar. There's narrowness, which means, like I said before, it means my relationship with Hashem would be described as narrow, distress. It's not the way it should be. But by getting out of that situation and reconnecting to Him, it becomes not only as good as it was before, but even greater than it would have been without that experience. So this is the deeper meaning to number 9. The Gemara says, if a person says, oh, the tshuva is greater, I have a great idea. I'm going to do an avera, and then I'll do tshuva. No, wait a second. Back up. I made a mistake. The simple meaning is a person says, I want to have my cake and eat it. Today I'll do an avera. I have a good time. Tomorrow I'll do tshuva. Nothing gets in the way of tshuva. What's wrong with that? So the Gemara says, Hashem says, if a person is going to say, I will do an avera and then do tshuva, then heaven will not allow him to do tshuva. It won't be acceptable. So don't try that. That's the simple meaning. The Hasidic interpretation is, no, it's not that. It's a person who realizes and understands and appreciates the greatness of about tshuva. And how a person who does tshuva reaches a level of connection to Hashem that's almost impossible to reach without going through that experience. So he says, so maybe I'd like to do the same thing. Let me do an avera, not God forbid because I want to be distant from Hashem, but because I want to feel later that real strong connection only after doing an avera. So the Gemara says, no, that's unacceptable. Normally, you have to do things right. And don't do anything that creates a distance between you and Hashem. If you've already been in that situation, then you should know that by doing tshuva, you become stronger and you become more connected. But to begin with, you're not allowed to go down that route. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're severing your connection with Hashem. Chas v'shalom to do that. There's one more point that explains why and how that works. But I think we'll leave that for Yom Kippur when we talk more about tshuva. When we get to that booklet, I'll go into that part. But this is just to explain the general idea of shofar, what shofar accomplishes. And there's so much more, naturally, but at least a little bit of understanding what the shofar is all about. Okay. Yes.
So also on Rosh Hashanah is the apple and honey.
Is what?
Also on Rosh Hashanah is
Apple and honey, right,
And we always hear for a sweet year.
right.
According to Chassidus, like, is there, like, what's the depth? Not just sweet.
It's in the booklet. We're gonna get there.
Oh, okay.
It's in the booklet on Rosh Hashanah, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I guess that'll be next week in Mitzvah Hashem, because tomorrow we don't have this class. Yeah, tomorrow we don't have this class.
You said this the time that I was in the Talib,
Bye,
was your video.
Rosh Hashanah, before blowing the shofar.
There is video of this.